go. So I brought more fire to douse dudes and playing by house rules. I'm laid back like a couch dude. I'm that dude to make his own beats, writes his own rhymes, records his own shit. Probably why it takes so much time to put out an album. Man, I'm always behind schedule. Ain't that I ain't hungry, I just always got my plate full. Try to digest all the topics that I'm spitting. You need to sit back and actually take the time to listen. We living in a new age where mind states are feeble. Kids' attention spans are shorter than Danny DeVito. My beats though, be banging, be about my business. Bass stays knocking like a Jehovah Witness. Leave them scattering with chattering, the gang of rhyme patterns. I ain't worth challenging. You gon' need some aspirin. Aspiring to be me, no empires to feed. Just a chosen few that's flowing through, firing up the weed. Jesus, crazy what the world coming to. I'm here to live it, make music. For y'all is just hanging on a gimmick, huh? Wait a minute, man. Don't get me confused with none of these newbie ass rappers, man. I know the game be feeling fucked up, but I've been making beats since '95, regardless if I had the right promotion or not. Word up. Hey yo, I ain't always humble, I ain't always intense. I've had my good and bad days like anyone else, more or less. Probably a lot more than less, or the more of it in a sense. Feel blessed, so I just move forward through the stress. We don't smoke stress, smoke the bombest weed you ever seen. Cannabis club category, certified Cali green. Type of bomb that I keep up in my sack. They give a lot of cats anxiety attacks, there's no denying the facts. But enough about the weed though, I keep it on a need to know basis. It's time for me to cut to the chase quick. So download this free LP, spread it to your friends and family, even to the little haters mad at me. I got 2 official LPs coming after these. So far I'm grateful for the love that's coming back to me. Truly appreciate the support, especially my peeps that had my back when I was going in and out of court. But of course a shout out to all my people. They kept the game alive instead of killing it, selling out with weak flows. My crew, anyone that gave an honest point of view. Much respect besides me, man. I do this shit for you, yeah, for you. Overpasses, some choose to overlook it. They should be looking past it. We hope for classics, we over you whack masters. Soul suspects, man, we fall from the average. People try to act like they shit don't stink. They'll be up shit's creek, plus they ships gon' sink. Now they knee deep in bullshit with nothing to think. On the brink of dealing with the most unpleasant of things. Time switch up, find ways to humble your strut. Just when you was thinking you was the next runner up, shit out of luck, yo, it's just the way it goes. I ain't gotta stress the rest, all you already know. From a distance, street lights start to filter in. Home from a round trip, had to visit new lands. Back in the building again, back from building with fam. Spaced out, sleep deprived, staring at the ceiling fan. So many things that they said to us when we was kids, but it was all bullshit. Yeah, open up your eyes. They would try to tell us one thing, then say the next thing. So I say, never listen to the lies. Man, everyone's a critic, just spit it how you live, it's how it's meant to be intended. So open up your eyes. It's all part of the game, ain't nothing but a dang dog. So I say, learn to read between. Yo, you going at it all wrong, so open your eyes. Yo, them cats be living life like they got 9 lives, so don't try. I hit very hard for my size, 6'2", a little over 185, so get it right. They tough talk is filled with fallacies. Believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. So please, they can go and try to play the road as positive, but either way they talk with it, we know when they prerogative. Even if they polish up their image with some party tracks, we see through the lies, we ain't even need a polygraph. This is passion, the vibe is everlasting. It's better than the last one and colder than the aspens. Used to be overreactive, now I'm overreacting. Now pissed off, I'm mad at me and I'm over here laughing. Shit is crazy, ain't it? The game is crazy, tainted. But I'ma do my thing and stay crazy fake. So many things that they said to us when we was kids, but it was all bullshit. Yeah, open up your eyes. They would try to tell us one thing, then say the next thing. So I say, never listen to the lies. Man, everyone's a critic, just spit it how you live, it's how it's meant to be intended. So open up your eyes. It's all part of the game, ain't nothing but a dang dog. So I say, learn to read between the lines. after midnight, when the sun goes down, the moon's up. Some of the best time.
Oh, we don't have any lights on. But hopefully you guys can see me. Lights! God said that there be light. We're getting more error fun on. Let's see. Looks like we got a few of you here. We're getting some kind of error on God knows what. Ian, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you here. Luis, good to see you as well. I don't know I don't know what to deal with. YouTube's like feedback on these live streams is just freaking terrible. But I'm guessing that you guys can see and hear me, which is good news. And I think we got stuff going. So today we revisit what we did yesterday. It was dark indeed. It was dark days yesterday. This image has actually gone darker and it's not finished yet, but I've gone in and done a few things. Let's go over it. Let's look at kind of what we did overall, and then we have a time lapse to kind of watch together today of what I did. So let's see here. And there we go. Let's find, boop. That looks like the right thing. Daniel, what's going on, man? Good to see you here. Okay, so you guys should be seeing my screen now. This is what we rendered and worked on yesterday. And after an hour of kind of painting and stuff, we went to this. And like these blacks got too black. These greens are still green. I wasn't too happy with how that turned out overall. And so... what are the mistakes that we made? Well, Droki images are meant to be enjoyed and created with a beer. And yesterday I was working with coffee. So I think that was part of the problem, as Neil pointed out on Facebook. So we're going to have a lunchtime beer today, just to keep the gods of art and everything else happy. So anyways, and so last night after doing some client work, kind of late, I went back into 3D to adjust the things. What did I say at the very beginning of starting Photoshop, which is that normally I would go in and fix things like the fact that we kind of lost these gaps in 3D, but I didn't because I didn't feel like dealing with it. Basically, I was saying I was too lazy to go in and change things, which if your gut's saying that you should do something, you should probably do it. And and laziness is never an excuse. And I think that was part of the problem. At least the start of the problem, so to speak. And a big part of that is, I don't know if you guys remember back when we started working on this in 3D and we were kind of blocking everything in. The goal of doing that as simply as we did it was to make sure that we can make these kinds of changes without them being onerous as far as a pain in the ass goes. And what did I do at the very end of this? I wanted to change some of those big things, and I got too lazy to actually do it, because I would have to change the scatter object, and I would have to change a bunch of different meshes and move things around and repaint some stuff in the Forest Pro object. So I guess we kind of learned our lesson, or I told you guys not to do something, and then I went ahead and did it anyways. So case in point, we all make mistakes and get lazy. So anyway, so I went back into 3D. And I didn't make any huge changes. So this was the raw render that we started with yesterday. And then you can see basically I just changed the size of this middle thing, and I changed a few things with the rocks. So not a ton of change. I think I spent maybe half an hour or so in 3D. It wasn't even that much work, which like has me kicking myself in the ass now that I didn't do it before. But you live, you learn. You move on, you learn the same lessons over and over and over again. And then I just spent about an hour or so in Photoshop, and it's kind of gone dark, and it's probably gone a little bit too dark at this point, which I think is something that's common when you're just kind of like working quickly, is that you tend to overdo it. But the mood is actually starting to get to where I want it to be. So we still have a bit of Photoshop to do to start bringing some highlights back out and not losing quite so much into the fog. But but the overall feeling is kind of getting there. This still feels too bright, parts feel too dark. This is much lower contrast altogether, but we need to go in and probably like clean up some of these like bright spots that don't look right because of how much they stand out. And then go in and add in more kind of mid-tones so that we don't have such a black image. But I like where this is now, and I see a path forward. So really yesterday was kind of like a paint over that I just didn't realize it. Florin, I appreciate the heads up, and I did actually queue up some background music. And let's get this video started. So we have kind of a quick time lapse that I'll kind of talk through of everything that I did. Yeah, we'll do that today, and then maybe I'll finish photoshopping this tonight, and we'll do kind of a little bit of this tomorrow, or maybe we'll do this tomorrow. I don't know yet. I don't know what tomorrow holds. Either way, it's not done yet, but it's getting there, I think, and I'm in much better spirits about it than I was yesterday. So let's see, what screen do we need? We need, I think, this screen. Okay, let's get that starting to play. And Luis, yes, we do have a shortcut to some music now, thank God. And let's see if it's actually playing. And let's see to make sure that I have it actually turned on. I don't have it turned on in OBS. You guys should be able to hear that now. Okay, so you can see, let's see, yeah, you can see what's going on there. I'm basically just going through here, and I'm actually going to turn that down in my headphones, because it's a little distracting trying to talk whilst it's on. Hopefully you guys can still hear that. I think you can. I don't think, no, you guys definitely can't hear that anymore. That should be good. You guys should be able to hear that. I should be able to talk over that. So basically, I'm just moving the things that I tried to do in Photoshop yesterday that didn't work out well into place so that we have a little bit more room on each side of the island so that it doesn't feel like it's stopping the eye. You can still kind of go around it a little bit. And it's really not that exciting or anything that special, to be honest, of what I'm doing. I'm just moving, scaling things. And then fixing some stuff, and I think I kind of get bogged down with the little details on a phone call with a friend while I was doing it, and you can see, I think we're gonna see me play with adjusting one part of the rocks for a while. But yeah, at the end of the day, this was like a half an hour, and why I didn't do it beforehand is just beyond me. But such is life. Such is life. So yeah, so this is kind of a nice live stream for me. I don't have to do anything. I just get to kind of sit here, talk, and enjoy a beer. But yeah, things seem to be working. Oh, and it says the stream's working again. Fantastic. So yeah, so we're going to go into Photoshop here. I don't know. I actually don't know when things are going to happen. I've been working very, very long hours in the past few days. A lot of like 16-hour days on this kind of rush project I've been working on. So my memory is not the clearest of things at the moment, but such is life. Ian, yes, that's a normal map. That's just some random cliff texture that I found on textures.com or something like that. And it's supposed to be like a pretty small, like a 2 meter by 2 meter, I think, section of rock that I'm stretching out over probably hundreds of meters. And the displacement map is pretty low contrast, and the diffuse map is pretty low contrast. So looking at the normals gives me an easier idea of kind of the direction that things are stretching. Because those are like, I don't know if you were watching before, those are like really, really simply unwrapped. Excuse me. Yeah, like basically unwrap, cut a couple of seams, and then just leave them as a mess. Not the best way to do realistic rocks by any means, but for kind of concept-y stuff like this, it's a quick and dirty way that lets you control like where things are pretty easily, because the geometry for those is super, super duper simple. And then displacement is basically what is keeping us from having like hard kind of polygonal edges on everything. And you can still see them in there. The idea of trying to go in, I don't know World Creator that well, and I just downloaded Gaia as well to play with that. But I definitely don't have the control to actually say like, this is the thing I'm trying to get out of it, and actually achieve that yet, which I need to learn, and it's on my list of things to do. I would not say that I know those tools yet, but I've also found in like the little bit of experimenting that I have done with it that they are they're not great for vertical surfaces, because the way that they tend to work is obviously displacing stuff using procedural maps and masks and algorithms and stuff, but as a result they can't go up and out. They kind of have to go up and back always. So yeah, you can see how stupid the geometry is here. I mean, it's super duper simple. But it works in a pinch, especially for sketches like this. I've used this technique for cliffs, mountains, rocks, you name it, I've kind of done it. One of the things that I'm doing right now is I duplicated that same exact rock texture or rock mesh, and changed the scale of the UVs to something like double roughly, and adjusted the displacement settings a little bit. So basically, as those two kind of interfere, if we have the first rock that's going up and down like this depending on displacement, because the surfaces are at the same thing, at the same level, when this one's displaced just a little bit, it kind of gradually gets revealed. It makes it a little bit more of a heterogeneous surface as opposed to kind of the same scale of rock crumbles throughout the entire thing. So basically I painted that last time. This time I kind of did it in 3D. You can see the interference in that material map that just popped up. Basically just two ways to do the same thing. One, you can render both of them and paint them together, which isn't bad if you want a lot of control over things. And sitting and waiting for it to render is not a big issue. Or you can do what I did here, and you can also adjust colors, and there's a bunch of stuff you can do kind of with that same principle, to kind of as a dirty hack to make landscapey stuff look good quickly, especially when you're working with displacement. Yeah, for this one I figured why bother with two renders when I can just deal with one. So I just did it in 3D. And you can see I keep checking like the depth map, because this image is pretty dark. I'm kind of checking to see where everything is and whether I got everything into the place that I thought I wanted it, by looking at the depth map, because it's a little bit clearer. So you can see kind of like where there are holes in the meshes. Sometimes that's a problem, sometimes that's not. I can also get like kind of a better idea of the composition that I'm moving towards, strangely enough, looking at the depth map over the color map. So yeah, so now I think I go in and I kind of tried to fix some displacement, so we roughed up those edges. This isn't particularly fun. Modeling's never that much fun. I'm just taking the displacement monitor off all of them all together and then putting them on at once, so I can adjust it at once and try to get some type of break up, kind of just really to the silhouette. And as it turns out, you can't even really see them right now, but you might start to see them in kind of the last stage of Photoshop that I still have yet to do on this image. I think we're probably like half an hour away from being done with this image. This current like kind of like super dark iteration I quite like, and I'm happy with how it turned out, or how it is turning out, but there are still a few things that keep jumping at my eyes and grabbing attention that I don't necessarily want grabbing attention. So a little bit more refinement. It's gone kind of super duper dark, but it is called BrightArtDarkTimes, so I guess that makes sense. I want to continue bringing back a little bit more of kind of the glow and midtones of the artificial lights that are kind of scattered around this scene. Let's see, what am I doing here in 3D now that I've lost focus? I'm not entirely sure. Talking to my buddy, perhaps? Not paying attention. yeah, still trying to fix this edge and figure out why it's displacing into polygons. And I think I kind of messed with this for a couple more minutes. One of the downsides of using displacement as heavily as these ones are using it for rocks is you only have a minimal amount of control kind of on the specifics. How does the color mapping work in F-Storm? It works kind of similar to, I guess Corona's is pretty similar. V-Rays is a bit different. Do I use LUTs? Sometimes I use LUTs, and sometimes I don't. The place where I use LUTs the most is in actually like my professional work. And what I use that for is if I'm working on a project, usually for like, let's say we're doing like 20 images of some like residential tower. Those first kind of 3 images that I do is kind of an experiment of like what's kind of like the overall feel and color palette and tone of these images going to be, to a place where I like it and also like the client's happy with it. So there's usually a decent amount of experimentation there. And when we kind of settle on like, yes, that's the right touch and feel to an image, I usually will go in and recreate that in a LUT, using sometimes Photoshop, sometimes DaVinci Resolve. Excuse me. Sometimes DaVinci Resolve, which has really, really powerful color tools. So you can just import a still into that and edit that still in Resolve, and export a LUT. But then that way there's kind of a similar color palette and tone to all of the images all the way through the project. And like, yes, there's always going to be tweaking and adjusting and stuff afterwards, but it gets everything kind of in the same family without me having to actually Photoshop that like initial kind of like direction into every image. So I use that a lot for bigger projects like this. For this project or for like sketches, sometimes I use it. It really depends on the image. I don't even think I tested any of like the LUTs that I've created or the LUTs that come installed or that I've downloaded with this one. I think part of that is because I've always kind of had only like so much of a clear picture. It wasn't until photoshopping today that I kind of had finally actually started to see something that resonated with what I thought I saw in my head the whole time. Maybe if I had played with some LUTs, I would have found that sooner. But I didn't in this occasion. I don't like to rely on LUTs. I like to use them as kind of spice on the top and not kind of like, there's a very kind of similar, there's one LUT that comes installed, which is what, D-LUT's Armchair or something like that. And you can like scroll through like a lot of like interior architecture, like forums or places where people post a lot of interior stuff, and you can just see that LUT being used over and over and over again, because it creates kind of like a cool, very specific aesthetic that's not bad. The problem is that there's no intention in that. It's kind of like, oh, this looks good, I'll go with it. And particularly for professional work, like you don't want to use it as a crutch, I don't think. What's going on, Mr. Clark? Good to see you again. Thank you for stopping back by. We're watching a time lapse of me dicking around in 3D again and trying to fix some of the mistakes. Right now, we might fast forward through this little section because it's super boring. I mean, these rocks are being displaced like 10 meters or 8 meters or something like that, and I'm just trying to figure out how to see some of the door without too much of a gap underneath of it. And you're just going to see me like moving points, letting it update, moving a point, letting it update. It takes way longer than it should. And like I said, I think I spent about a half an hour overall in 3D here. But this little section was, I think, showing my sleep deprivation over the past week. Right, I don't even think I realized right there that the reason that that went down so far is because I don't have show end result on, so it's not actually displacing it, it's just showing the geometry. And then it jumps back up, and I'm gonna be shocked here in a second, so fun. Tudor, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you here, my friend. Cheers to you. I hope you're doing well, bud. I hope you're doing well. And I hope everybody's doing well. I didn't start with my normal. I hope everyone is, had a good weekend, that their spirits are staying high, that they're staying safe, washing their hands lots and lots. Yeah, I feel like, we still got a long ways to go on this self-isolation and getting this thing under control. So I hope everyone's staying positive, finding a way to kind of beat back the darkness in their heads. I think that's important right now. So, yeah. What do we got? We got about 10 people sitting here in the chat, 8 people sitting in the chat. I would love to know where everybody's at. I've been told by a little birdie that one of my good friends from grad school might be sitting in the chat right now, hanging out quietly. Don't really know. Been told he's been sleeping on us. But yeah, I'd love to hear how everybody's doing, how their spirits are staying, what they're doing to stay positive, anything that they found that's worked or that they've been avoiding to keep themselves in good spirits. I think that we're all trying to figure this one out. I think. Yeah, you can see I'm still like, this is an exercise in stupidity. Oh, and Valmic is there. I had 2 guys sitting in the chat from grad school, I think, or at least previously. Valmic, how you doing, man? And where are you these days? Are you still in New York? I think you said last time you might be in Connecticut now. Is that just for the quarantine, or are you somewhere, or are you actually not in New York most of the time now? Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I like where it's going. As roundabout of a route as it's taken to get there. But I think what yesterday would have been a better use of time if I just acknowledged from the very beginning that I still had a little bit of 3D stuff that should be fixed in 3D, and then just treated the whole thing as a paint over, and worked even more roughly than I did. And I think that the image would probably be even stronger now had I done that. But you win some, you lose some. Every day you try to get a little bit better and try not to make the same mistakes. Oh, nice. Well, I'm glad you're not in New York itself, because that sounds pretty awful right now. But hopefully, people get locked down and things start getting a little bit better. That would be a good thing. So yeah, most of my friends in the city that have the opportunity to have gotten out of there, which is good. So I think we're about done the 3D part of things. Oh, my mouse has been sitting on that whole time. Sorry about that, dudes. And I think we're about to get into Photoshop. I don't really know. Moving a couple rocks just to make things a little bit clearer, all that kind of fun stuff. Okay, now we're in Photoshop. I'm leveling this mask first and foremost, because I know I want to be able to isolate that building, and for depth masks, at least when they're outputted from F-Storm, you can level them really harshly at 32 bits, and then even when you take it down to 16 bits, if I had leveled it that harshly in 16 bits, it would have been really, really banded. So I knew I wanted it. I did it before dropping everything down to 16 bits. And I think what we're going to find here in the beginning is I'm still trying to find my way, I think, on this image here. I fixed kind of like that main geometry issue and a couple other little things. But I'm kind of redoing some of the stuff I did yesterday. And some of the stuff I do here, I'm going to kind of paint over and undo later. One of the things that I have found when I get into Photoshop, particularly in Photoshop, it's important not to just sit and stare. Even if I'm not quite sure where I'm going, I'm going to keep my hand moving and keep changing stuff until I kind of get something figured out that starts to click. And when we see about an hour of this, which is not going to take an hour, I think we have like 25 more minutes of time lapse. It's not towards the end where things really kind of start to resonate with me, but I'm not going to stop changing things and adjusting things because I feel like that act of changing, adjusting, painting, fixing is just giving your brain kind of time to think through all of that. So now we're just fixing some of those geometry errors from, you know, my ridiculous use of displacement. At least some of them. And yeah, just kind of letting my brain kind of work, I think. You see this a lot like when I do thumbnails as well, which is at the beginning I'm just drawing kind of like nonsense. And the actual like first couple of sketches that I usually do if I'm trying to thumbnail an idea usually look like something really stupid. They themselves aren't worth anything, but it kind of gets your brain moving and gets your brain connected to your hand. And I think the same when you're editing an image. You can see I forgot to unwrap a piece there. I think I come back and paint a little bit there, but this is so small in the image anyways. I'm just kind of getting all of these big things fixed to some degree so that I don't notice them again at the end. And let's see here. Ian, Montreal is an awesome city. And I hope the job's still going well. And I'm glad that you've been practicing. I saw your message that you've been working on texturing. I am far from a pro when it comes to substance, but my God, the tools that we have now compared to before are freaking ridiculous. So amazing. And speeding up a lot of things and literally doing things that were impossible. I mean, only a couple of years ago. Yeah, texturing stuff, and I think that especially when you're starting, and materials take a while to kind of get like a quick feel for. Yeah, substance is awesome. Yeah, everyone's on lockdown, my friend. Everyone's on lockdown, but you know, there are worse places to be, and at least you have a computer and you can do some work, right? Let's see. Daniel says, "Hi. Do you work from home in normal times, or do you have some kind of office space?" Ever since I left New York, which was we're coming up on 2 years ago. My wife and I left right before we had our daughter, and we left for that reason. We didn't want to raise a kid in New York. That seemed like a giant hassle without a lot of benefits to it. And in New York, I had an office space, largely because our apartment was tiny. And I did like having a place to go every day. Now you're looking at what I guess is technically a bedroom in our apartment, but is my office space, and this is where I always work from. My wife, who also works for herself, but she does PR and marketing, she has a tendency to kind of, sometimes she's working from home, sometimes she goes to like coffee shops. She has a lot of meetings which pull her out of the house, but for me, I'm kind of always here. So we're just pulling out some stuff. There were rocks behind this, so I just painted in a whole bunch of fog so that we can read that arch. I like that little arch in there, kind of reaching out into the water. Excuse me. Very carbonated beer today, but at least it's a beer and not coffee. So yeah, just kind of basically going in and adjusting contrast everywhere, right? Like trying to get things that I want to read to be dark against light, and things that I want, you know, to kind of fall into nothingness, to keep going, keep getting softer in contrast, particularly in value. I'm not worrying a ton about color at the moment. At some point we start working in black and white for a little bit just to kind of get an eye on everything. But yeah, I'm not doing anything differently from yesterday, really. I'm just trying to do it a little bit more carefully with a little bit more intent. And here I'm just still kind of like dicking around, trying to figure out what it is that I want this image to do. Daniel asks, any routine that I can share to keep the head rolling, not going wild for the freelancer working from home? I'm probably not the best person for that question. I'm definitely a workaholic, which I guess is not a healthy thing, or a lot of people would argue that it's not a healthy thing. But I enjoy working, whether that's doing stuff like this and making images for fun, or actually like trying to make the last couple, making every professional project a little bit better than the one before it. So I work pretty long hours, which I'm told is not healthy. But and there are a lot of people that stick to like a very strict routine. Like they get up, they make their bed, they get dressed like they're going for work. And these are people that work from home normally. They go to their office, they work from some set of hours, 9 to 6, 10 to 8, 10 to 5, whatever it might be. And then when that time comes around, they leave the office, shut down the computer, and they don't enter again until the next day. That doesn't really work for me personally because, I have some sleep issues, something called non-24-hour wake sleep syndrome, which means I don't really keep to a 24-hour natural clock. And even if I stop working for the day, there's a decent chance that I'm coming to my computer to draw or to make sketches like this or whatever it might be. And so I don't stick to a strict routine, but I do a couple of things. One is I make my bed when I wake up in the morning, so I feel like I've gotten something to do. Max, the founder of one of the co-founder, of Kit Bash, is a huge believer in that, and I found it to be, even though I don't like making the bed, I do think it's actually a good way to start the day. So I picked that up. I think he got that from Eat That Frog. I forget that book. I forget the author of that book. I don't agree with everything in Eat That Frog, but I think that the making your bed in the morning is his idea, or where that came from. I start my day with an hour of practice. Right now that's like drawing, like sketching, and digital painting, and I don't usually share what that work looks like. The idea is that that's not going to be posted. That's like a very safe place for me to make mistakes, try things that I'm not comfortable with, and everything else. And I do that first thing in the morning when I wake up, as a way to kind of get things moving in my head creatively, but also as a way to kind of like making the bed. If I do that in the morning, no matter how rough the day goes, I've always accomplished something. But after that, what are the other tips? I mean, after that, I work a lot, so I'm not good with balance in general. I do use an app frequently called Freedom, which turns off Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, Twitter, Reddit, all the things that I would potentially waste time on. It turns all of those off, both on my phone and on my computer, for like a set amount of time. If I find myself procrastinating or not working, especially when I should be working or being productive, I turn that on so that I don't have like the choice to waste time, basically. I think it's like a couple dollars a month, and like if it works once a month, if you need it once a month, that's still gonna pay for itself. What else? Now that the baby is home all day every day, I have more interruptions in the middle of the day. And one of the things that I do before bed every night is like the 3 gratitudes, writing down 3 things that happened that day that I was thankful for or happy about. There's a really good TED Talk about that, and a lot of people have talked about it. And one of the things that I have found for me personally doing that is that it gives me a lot of patience, right? Because if my daughter comes running in here because she wants to show me something, if I'm working, it's easy to get frustrated of being interrupted while working. But my 20-month-old baby does not give a shit about that. And so that's going to happen regardless. And B, if I just kind of say like, oh, so this is going to be a little break. This is going to be a couple minutes of break, and I'm just going to enjoy the fact that, my daughter's here and happy and has, she learned how to dance today or do the twist, or she's still working on jumping, which is adorable because she gets the whole body going, and kind of like throws her hands up, but her feet don't leave the ground. But she's into it. So I've definitely found myself to be more patient, right? If I'm going to be interrupted from work, I might as well enjoy it as opposed to be frustrated. And I very much credit the gratitudes for kind of giving me that. So now we're starting to make some big changes to this image. I know I've not been talking through it. I'm not doing anything super fancy in this. But I am going through and I'm kind of using hue saturation and blend if settings to kind of do like a more controlled split toning of this image. And I think it's about to get really dark here and reduce a lot of contrast in a second. I'm not entirely sure that I'm there yet or not in this project. But there's also kind of a change of one of the things that I think is bothering me is that we do have a lot of contrast in that top tower, which I wanted to do. But as I kind of kept working on it, it kind of became more about kind of like the light spots. And I think it took me a long time to realize that the contrast that I added to that tower with the cliff behind it kept bringing attention up there when the rest of the image was saying that it's like the lights being on that's important. And I think I start doing something about that here in a second. Right now I'm just kind of going through and applying some like presets in color effects, and I think I use Topaz Simplify in a second to kind of make some global adjustments. I think I'm still thinking here like why can't I quite get this to what I want it to look like yet. And here, yeah, so you can see I'm starting to kind of paint out some of the contrast that I had added in earlier, just by adding like some soft fog in there, which has the effect of taking the tones and the values of these towers and pushing them back towards the colors that are behind it, which is going to make it a less important thing compositionally. And I'm at some point I know I come back and do more of that to get it to kind of where it is now. So yeah, trying to add a little bit of more actual texture into the fog, I think here. Those lines that I just drew there right behind the castle were a mistake, and they're still in this image, and it's one of the main things that I feel like need to get done. But you can see by painting that little bit of fog behind that line, that brings that edge out and gives it a little bit more shape and structure, even though those are continuous. Just by that sharp adjustment of value, it feels like there's depth in between them now. So just kind of doing that, painting them around, figuring things out. It's strange, when I did the sketch at the beginning of this, I really thought that this was going to be a pretty straightforward image for me to make, but somehow I kind of lost my way on it. Such is life. We're going to go in, I think, now and start fixing all of the floating trees, which there are fewer of in this one, but still a decent number. And I don't like that high amount of contrast, so I'm just painting in like some, clone stamping in basically just a little bit of tree texture to bring things together. Yeah, still just fixing stuff. Let's see, what do I do next? I do this for a little bit. I don't do as much painting on this one as I did on the other one, because not as many things need to be quote-unquote fixed. And for most, this is just like little details that, to be honest, I probably could have skipped them and they would never be seen unless you looked at it at full res. And this isn't an image that's like going anywhere, so that is kind of, there's no point for that. But you do kind of have to make a decision on how much painting of that kind of stuff you want to do, because if you do, at least for me, I either like to do a lot of it so that the whole thing feels painterly, or try to keep it to like soft painting, just fixing little things here and there so the image doesn't feel quote-unquote painted. But yeah, this is Topaz Simplify, which kind of is like a it's a plugin that like quote-unquote gives you like painterly effects that look awful, if I'm being honest. But it does kind of, if you use the effect lightly, it does have a tendency to kind of like soften and abstract like kind of like the pixel perfect nature of 3D. And so you can see right now that it's pretty simplified, like it's removed a lot of detail from things and kind of like blocked colors together. I don't use this ever, like I usually keep the effects somewhat subtle, and then even when when it comes back into Photoshop, I'm going to turn the opacity of it way down. But I do think that it has like a nice effect of just like in a very minor way softening kind of like the 3D-ishness of an image. But yeah, we're going to turn it way down just so it's kind of like a, 30% or 40% opacity, kind of adjusting where it's affecting things with blend if, so that it doesn't kill all of the highlights, which it has a tendency to do. Yeah. So yeah, that tree has a ton of contrast around it. It hides the top of the building, and it's probably still a little bit too dark. I might lighten it more. I don't know. That edge that's kind of right on the right of the screen, or was just a second ago. It's a very sharp line of contrast, and as a result, it grabs a lot of attention. And looking at the image as it ends up, it's still there. So that's another thing that kind of needs to get softened and tweaked a bit in the last steps of things. But yeah, we're kind of getting there. Give you guys an update. Looks like we have like 8 more minutes or so of this, which kind of brings us almost neatly to the end of our hour. But there's some pretty big changes that happen now. You can see I have a hue saturation layer at the top, looking at like things in black and white, so I can really focus on just value. And that's a great way to kind of like take a look at your composition and see what's going on. And actually in black and white at this point, even though it's not going to stay black and white, just going in and painting in some like little highlights and stuff. I don't want to see like huge brush strokes. You still see a few of them, but less than last time, let's say. Black and white's always a good thing. If your image isn't working in black and white, that's the problem. And so looking at it in black and white is a quick way to kind of get an idea of the major value, or specifically it's showing you the values of everything. But values are more important than color when it comes to kind of like legibility and control. If you get the values in the right place, you can kind of do anything you want with the color. And so yeah, just going in, fixing some stuff. These last couple minutes is probably where I do the most, and this was right before I started streaming. I just stopped it with enough time to actually output this into a time lapse. And you can see that I'm about to take it a little bit too dark, but that's okay. We can bring it back a little bit. But it's starting to kind of have like the soft or cozy, dark but cozy feel that I wanted. So now that we kind of have that, it's just a matter of making it better. So you can see there's still a lot of contrast in the background, which I'm going to start bringing down further, both like at the trees by painting some clouds in and all that kind of stuff. And then I start using a lot of luminosity masks, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with at all. Basically, loading either the RGB or the red, green, or blue individually as masks. Okay, so here's this. And they tend to look weird when you invert them. Excuse me, but it allows you to kind of affect a bunch of colors or values or whatever you want to do just based off of their luminosity in the image. And so you can see, as per usual, I'm like over adjusting everything, and trying to figure out like, okay, if I want to adjust everything except for the lights, I want to find the thing where there's the most contrast between the lights and everything else. And a lot of like what you're looking at now, when it gets really dark, I'm basically making layers that are showing me the things that I know that I need to move forward. So you can see I'm toning down the stark contrast that's kind of coming up from the horizon right behind those clouds, I guess. Right behind those trees, excuse me. Again, because I felt like that contrast right at the edge. And someone said it yesterday, and that might have been what they meant. And if so, I wish I had understood it then. But yeah, just reducing the contrast between the actual edge line of the trees and the sky right beneath it. And then we kind of start painting in this idea that like the main part of this image is like the light coming from the houses, which I think makes sense for the idea of like bright art, dark times, right? And kind of like the idea that I started with at the beginning. It just took me a while to find my way back to it, but you know, that's the way it goes. So yeah, let's see what else I do here at the very end. Because I kind of want like a soft, like glowy feel to this image, I'm using a lot of like copy merged. I think this right here, what's happening right here, is when things really started to click. I'm like, okay, that's the direction. Obviously, like that's really loose and a little bit sloppy, but it started to feel right, like kind of at that moment. And so now I just need to push that further a bit. And I lost my train of thought. Right, Clark? Like, that's kind of like, that was like the moment like, I mean, it took me another hour of Photoshop to get to that point. But like, that's like, oh, there's something happening there that I like. And I need to push that idea. And I still need to go in and refine it. It's not there yet. But yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to work on this later tonight and record my screen and just show this again tomorrow. Let me know if you guys are like enjoying me kind of like rambling along while this is playing in the background. I definitely can't do this all the time because it obviously ends up taking twice the amount of time because I need to find time during the day to do work and then sit and watch it. But I would love to know whether you guys like this kind of format, or if I should just wait until tomorrow and get back into Photoshop tomorrow. I'd love to know what feels better for you guys, so that at least when it's possible, I can do that. Here I'm just reducing the contrast between these trees that are intersecting this displaced rock. And you can see I'm darkening it overall, but I'm also reducing a ton of contrast, which you can see by that super flat curve, which also reduces saturation. So there's some saturation being added back in so that it fits in. And then that edge just kind of like fades away as opposed to clearly showing us that we have trees sticking out of rocks. What is this one doing? I'm not sure what the last couple of things do here. It's a mystery. That I think I'm just bringing a little bit of saturation back into the highlights. And you can see, I think for the next couple of minutes here, I kind of push things a little bit too far towards darkness. But that's okay. Easy to tone it back. Falmic, that's good to know. Parts of it's easier because I don't have to work live, which is easier to kind of focus and be a little bit more efficient working this way. So maybe I'll figure out kind of a routine that makes this work a bit better. So if I work more efficiently, then we're saving time overall anyways. Kind of. At least for you guys. But I'm glad that it's that you guys are enjoying it, and I'll keep that in mind and definitely try to do it when it makes sense. And Clark, thank you. I definitely don't have all the answers now. I certainly didn't have them any number of years ago, and I don't expect to have them excuse me, I don't expect to have them, a year from now or 10 years from now even. I do find trying to kind of be aware of like my tendencies. So you can see right now, just to go back to this, like how much that like whitish blue color, but kind of behind our mountain is now like standing out. And that's still here. I'm looking at like the final image on my other monitor on my Cintiq, and it's still there, and it's very, very distracting. So that's the first thing that needs to go. And then you can see here, I'm making it too dark, but that's the way it goes. But yeah, I do think like thinking about your own process and your own tendencies is important as a means to improvement, right? If you're not kind of like critical of like the same kind of like traps or routines or like bad habits that you get yourself into, you're destined to repeat them. So I think that's where we're at right now. I don't think I go back and do anything else. I think it just sits here on this screen. And what I was probably doing when I did this is I do have a tendency to like stand up and walk away from my images. Like I'll go over to the back of the room or just back away, which is not the same as like zooming out. Because when you're zooming out within Photoshop or whatever else it might be, and there we go, that's that. When you're zooming out in, we can just pull that image up. There we go. When you zoom out, it's getting less pixels in there, so you're actually reducing the resolution of what you're seeing. Going further away from it kind of gives you a better idea of what's happening in it. So yeah, I think that's what I got for you guys today. This might go up on Instagram sometime tonight, maybe not, who knows. Don't really know what the answer is. I have some more work to do. We'll see how that goes this afternoon. But yeah, we'll be back again tomorrow. We'll be back again tomorrow to either look at how this was finished or to finish it. One of the two. And only time will tell. But hope you guys enjoyed that. I appreciate you guys kind of sticking with me through like the ups and downs of making an image. And as much as I feel like there's a part of me that wants every time I come on these live streams to go smoothly and, like just have like this quick direction from like doesn't look good to looking good each and every time. That's not the reality of work, how work goes for me or I think for anybody. So maybe it's good that you guys are kind of seeing me of like how like, oh, things are looking cool. I like the initial sketch. Things didn't go smoothly in 3D, then they did go smoothly in 3D, then they didn't in Photoshop, now they are, and like that's the process, and this is at least how I work through it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you are all staying positive, staying productive. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with me. I do appreciate it. And yeah, until same time tomorrow, happy rendering, guys. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.